chapter 1, starting in verse number 9. This is an encouraging chapter. This is an encouraging time, and maybe this is what we need. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and step out on a limb and say it's what we need, because I tend to be just ignorant enough just to trust what the Lord says. And when He says let's park and hang out in 2 Timothy for a little bit, that's what we're going to do. So I hope that you can go on and read ahead as you did Sunday night. Sunday night I stopped at Mark 6:34, but I could tell y'all didn't stop at Mark 6:34. Y'all just kept right on reading. And when I got to verse 35, Paul Harvey and me knew the end of the story. That is fine. I would rather come to church with everybody that is studied up and prayed up than not anybody at all. Okay, I promise. So I want you to read ahead and to look on and to be studied up, as I've said numerous times. And give me a second and I'll get back on point. I know I'm chasing a squirrel. I've said numerous times, if you only do church 2 to 3 hours a week, then you're not doing it enough. Okay? You're not. So, there you go. With that said, 2 Timothy chapter 1, picking up at verse number 9. Let's open up in a word of prayer. Good evening, God. Thank you. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for blessing us. Thank you for the wonderful blessing of salvation that you have bestowed upon us. Thank you for the saving grace. Thank you for the daily assurance. And Father, as we go through the ups and downs and the ebb and flows of life, I pray that you be there, that you reveal that you are there with us. We're the ones that often forget that you're not with us, but in times of trouble, you're there. In the good times, you are there. So remind us to constantly praise and lift your holy name. Bless the children and kids and youth as they go downstairs, and bless us as we stay up here and look at 2 Timothy. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, 2 Timothy chapter 9, let's get right into it. Who has saved us and has called us to a holy calling, not according to our works, but according to His own purpose and grace, which was given to us in Christ Jesus before the world began. Who are you called? Who are you saved by? I ask you, was it Sunday morning or Sunday night? I don't remember. One of the times I asked you, what if you lost the most precious thing to you? What if you lost the one thing that was most precious to you? Now, preacher, that's unrealistic. Sure, it's unrealistic. Because you can have 20 things that are precious to you, okay? You can. But what's the one thing that's most precious to you? I would hope we're in church, you would give a church answer of salvation. So, let's say that salvation is the most important thing to you, which it is. Who called you to your salvation? You ever thought about that? That's right, Linda, I saw you. Who called you to your salvation? Now, you often hear me make reference in East Tennessee as Granny, and I know some good grandmothers, all right? I know some good mamaws. No, Mama didn't call you to salvation. Mama might have prayed that you have salvation, but Mama didn't call you to salvation. You're only called to salvation through the blood, through the death, through the burial, through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's where you're called to salvation. For that, we are called to salvation. Now, raise your hand if you're in the camp that Jesus' death was vain and pointless. It wasn't. So let's not make it vain and pointless. Let's accept Him. We have. Now let's live for Him. And therefore, we can live a life according to what? It says it right there in verse number 9. His plan, His will, His purpose for your life. You ever been wrong before? All the men say, yep. All the women say, nope. Okay, so we're all right tonight. Yes, we're all right tonight. Absolutely. Good job. Thank you. At least you're paying attention. Yes, we've all been wrong a time or two. We've all had to swallow our pride. Well, let me tell you about a man named Jesus that's never got it wrong. Never got it wrong. And even Sunday night when we learned that he told the young man, he says, now go and tell the religious leaders. Don't tell nobody else. Well, the young man forgot. He got excited and he made it hard on Jesus. And so he began to tell the good news of Jesus to the town. And Jesus had to scurry out and stay on the outskirts of town. I think that was all part of God's will and plan. But Jesus has a plan and purpose, and He don't waste no time. It's not junk. You are here. I heard a conversation in the back about kids in school, and I could imagine it was not about the good kids. Maybe it was, I don't know, but let's say it was about the bad kids. Well, some of those bad kids are still bad kids, and I'm not calling you ladies out by no means, because I know your hearts, and one of you's retired and one of you's nearing retirement, so you've got your time established. But God don't make no junk. He might make some stinker kids. He might make kids that make bad choices. He might make some parents that don't know how to parent, and that makes the kid bad, okay. But God don't make no junk, and God made you, okay? So God don't make no junk. I know that's terrible English. But it has been revealed through the appearing of our Savior, Jesus Christ, who has destroyed death and brought life and immortality through the gospel. Verse number 10 says, immortality and light through the gospel. What does gospel mean? Does anybody know what gospel means? That's right, Mia. It literally means good news. God brought the good news through Jesus Christ. And it is this gospel that I have been appointed a preacher, an apostle, and a teacher of the Gentiles. Another word to put there instead of teacher or preacher is herald. Herald. What is herald? An official messenger. Not just a messenger, an official messenger. It's an old English word. You're appointed herald. The Herald Gazette is a newspaper that I don't know what city it's from, but you hear that a lot. You hear the headlines. It's an official. You're an official messenger. He's an apostle. He's a teacher. He took his role of Jesus very seriously. And as we were talking before, it even changed his life. Obviously physically, because he had to be blinded. And we do know. Don't just think. Now, here's where I teach my kids in school, and I teach my kids in life, and many of you all feel the same way. We don't get to make a choice today and get off scot-free tomorrow. Every choice that we do today will affect us tomorrow or sometime down the road, both good and bad. October the 8th, 2005, I made a real good choice, and it's been benefiting me ever since. I'll let you figure out if you want to, but that's Steph and I's anniversary. Her, on the other hand, she's probably like, well, this benefited me some, but it sure cost me a lot. But we make choices that affect ourselves. Paul didn't get off scot-free with his salvation. His salvation is full and free. Hear what I'm saying. Hear what I'm saying. His salvation was full and free. But how did Paul obtain his salvation? Walking on the road to Damascus, a bright light blinded him. We know that from that point on, Paul never gained his full sight back. Paul never gained his full sight back. So there was consequences still for the sin. So don't live this life thinking I'm sin free. I'm sin free. No. You are sin-free, but there's still consequences. There's still consequences. for your sins. So Paul's life was changed physically, spiritually, emotionally, all at one moment. Because remember, he was going to Damascus to kill the Christians. He was blinded by a bright light, turned and went back and told all the Christians, never mind, I'm good, we're good, I was wrong, let's tell about the good news of Jesus Christ. So his life was changed. Is your life changed? Is your life changed? I like what he says here. He says, not that I am suffering these things. Nevertheless, I am not ashamed. I am convinced that He is able. I'm convinced that He is able and that I have entrusted in Him until that day. I'm convinced that He is able. Do you live your life in such a way that you know that Jesus is able? Do you live your life in such a way that you know that God is able? It's amazing to see the number of people that truly want to turn their life around. I see it on I say daily basis, weekly, daily basis. People truly, hey, preacher, I need to do better. That's what you said yesterday. Preacher, man, I'm trying. Well, you was trying last week. Quit trying and do it. Quit trying and do it. Put it over in the Lord's hands. Put it in the Lord's hands. Now, sometimes it takes a little bit of work on our part. It's not just giving it to the Lord and letting Him lead. No. I've told you about my opportunity to but before I came to Deep Springs, I struggled. Stephanie will tell you, she said, you should have resigned 6 months earlier. And I probably should have resigned 6 months earlier. But I didn't. I hung around. I kept doing what I was, the Lord was still blessed us. But so I resigned on Sunday. The following Sunday, while I'm still working out my 30-day notice, I receive a message that says Deep Springs is looking for a pastor. Huh? I can't help but think if I'd have resigned 6 months earlier, would God have honored that then? Or had I waited 3 more years, would I have missed this beautiful opportunity to be your pastor? Because God says, no, they're not calling you to. You let go here. That was career suicide. It was. Any preacher will tell you, don't do that. But to quote Paul here, but God. Then why do we have little faith? He says, I am convinced and I have entrusted my life to Him until that day. Verse 13, hold fast to the firm foundation. Hold fast to your firm teachings. Hold fast to the faith in Jesus Christ. Keep the pattern. He's telling Timothy here. He said, what have you heard from me? Keep the pattern of sound teachings with faith and love in Jesus Christ. Verse 14 it says, the good things which committed unto thee by the Holy Ghost, which dwell in us. One of the commentators, and forgive me for not writing his name down, I bounced back and forth between 3 of them, and I just jotted it down. I did not want to give one credit for. So this is not a Brockenism. This is a Brock oops by not giving credit to somebody. Guard means, or it says, what did he say? It says, good things which have committed unto thee. It's like a deposit. It's like a deposit. It's like a deposit into your bank account. It's yours. You got a $200 extra for helping your neighbor do something. The Lord blessed you or something. I don't know. We worked overtime one day and gained a little extra money. And so that money is given to you. And it's deposited into your account to use how you see fit. Now, if you make good choices, $200 go a long way. If you make a bad choice, you blink and it's gone. Okay, David, I know. You go to this gas station one time, it's gone. Go buy a price of eggs, I know. But, you know what? Okay, I should have used more money. But, It's like a deposit into your account. You're responsible for it. Your salvation is through the blood of Jesus Christ. But that's right, Katrina. You're responsible for it. You're responsible for it. I often refer to looking at the mirror and look at yourself in the mirror. Let me ask you, what if God got inside your spiritual bank account? What if He got inside your spiritual bank account? I ain't talking about money at this point, because some of the most richest people I know ain't got a dollar to their name. And some of the poorest people I know has got millions of dollars in the bank. It ain't about money. It's about what are you doing with what God gave you. Are you telling the good news of Jesus Christ? Jesus Christ deposited salvation for you, full and free. He's telling Timothy here, he says, then go and live and serve. Verse 15 says, this thou knowest, that all thou which are in Asia has turned away from me. Everybody in Asia has given up on Him. They turned their back on Him. And could you blame them? Preacher, could you blame them? They were wrong. But who was Paul imprisoned by? The Romans. Romans didn't put you in prison for a traffic violation. Rome didn't put you in prison because you made supper on the Sabbath and you walked over a mile. They didn't mess with those petty crimes. You was in prison with Rome because you messed up. And the good news is, when you went to prison in Rome, you had a home for life because you weren't getting out. So they knew it. So they knew Paul messed up. Paul, you messed up. So we're done with you, buddy. You shouldn't have got caught, Paul. You should have been a little more careful. Well, first of all, they took out God of that equation. Paul probably did more work in prison than he did out of prison. Now, I know the 3 missionary journeys. Yes, he established those churches. He got those churches where they needed to be and went back 2 more times to make sure they was behaving. And sometimes when they weren't behaving, he made a special trip up there to crack the whip and say, I was just here last year, you hoodlums. He probably used a better word than that, or maybe a worse word. I don't know what he said. But he got them straight. The reason I say he did more work in prison, because he could have rolled over and given up and nobody would have blamed him. We would have had enough. But he didn't. He continued to write letters. He continued to serve God so faithfully behind prison walls, behind prison doors. And he said, but they've all given up on me. But it don't matter. I'm going to serve anyway. I'm going to serve anyway. And then he says, but may the Lord give mercy unto the house of one Cyrus, who has refreshed me and was not ashamed of my chains. There's been one, Timothy. There's been one. And I hope that when you come in contact with him, you're able to encourage him. There's been one. Paul was pretty blunt. And we know that Paul, he did not fluff or he did not exaggerate. He really didn't. If Paul had exaggerated any of his Gospels, they would have been 10 times thicker. Paul, just about every one of Paul's verses is a sermon. He didn't waste time. He didn't, Matthew, Mark didn't waste no time either. Matthew, he added a little, Matthew and Luke, they were smarter, they were older. They added a few extra adjectives and things like that. Not Paul, forget it. Paul was straight to the point and got on out of the way. So when Paul says there was only one, I would have to believe there was only one. But I also believe that if there had not been any, Paul would have continued in the faith. Paul would have continued in the faith. And on the contrary, when he was in Rome, he searched for me until he found me. May the Lord grant that He will find mercy in the Lord on that day, and that you will know how He has helped me in Ephesus. And that you will know very well, as it says there in verse 18, that He has helped me. Who's got a good word for God this morning? Evening. I promise I slept good last night. Who's got a good word for God? What a blessing it is to be a child of God. But what a sad thing it would be to waste if we was not serving Him faithfully. Now, I know your hearts. I see the food you delivered this week. I see the servant heart that you had over the last week. I know what you're going to do next week. Not because you've bragged about it, but because A, you've said pray for you, or two, you said, hey, there's a need here and I want to do this, and okay, I see that. And if it was about boasting or bragging, you'd put it on Facebook. So it's not about boasting or bragging. And that's okay. That's a great thing. It's in the genuineness of the heart. So I see it living in your life. But I want to encourage us. We can always do it a little bit better. Timothy had already been established. Timothy was very successful, doing good, but Paul just wanted a little bit more out of Timothy. Paul just wanted a little bit more out of Timothy. Keep on keeping on, young man. Keep on keeping on. Deep Springs, I think, if Paul was here today, he would say, keep on keeping on. I know you're tired. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit longer. And in the spectrum of eternity, just a little bit longer is just that, a speck. A speck. So, church, my words for you and the Holy Bible's words for you and Paul's words would be this. Keep the faith. Live the faith. And serve on, church. Serve on. Thank you for being here tonight. And let's serve on together. Thank you.